Welcome to the evening conversation. My name is Maazi Ezeoke. This evening, we will be looking at the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We'll be having a guest who will join me to look at uh, this evening. Now, to give us an insight into what we are going to be discussing, my guest this evening will be Emeka Ugwu-Oju, who is the Chairman, Board of Trustees, BOT Southeast South Professional of Nigeria. He was the coordinator for good governance, coordinator, Southern Professional, and embodiment of leadership, a vision, and unwavering commitment. Emeka is an advocate for positive change and unity, a seasoned professional with a wealth of experience in various fields, with a vision to empower and uplift communities through collaboration and innovation. A trailblazer in advocacy, a journey that began with a passion for advocacy, with recognition that progress could only be achieved through collective efforts. His tireless work in promoting dialogue, understanding, and synergy, which has earned him respect across diverse sectors. His leadership extends beyond boardrooms. He has been in forefront of discussions on critical issues such as constitutional reform, regional development, and social justice. His ability to navigate complex challenges with grace and determination sets him apart. My guest is more than a professional, he is a bridge builder, whether it is about fostering collaboration between communities, advocating for policy changes, or championing education initiative. He consistently seeks common ground. Emeka, as fondly called by many, envisions a Nigerian where every citizen thrives. His commitment to sustainable development, ethical leadership, and inclusivity drives his work. Through platforms like ours here on Njenje Media, he shares his thought, engages in thought-provoking conversation that drives change. Now, here with me is Emeka Ugwu-Oju. I say, you're welcome once more to Njenje Media TV, and thank you for this one-on-one conversation.
Thank you, Maazi, for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So let's quickly get the ball rolling. Now, the conversation today, the topic of our conversation, is on a new Nigerian constitution. Why, how, and when. Before we get into the why, before we get into the how, and before we get into the timeline, what is your take regarding the constitution that we have today, the 1999 constitution, which many have said this is a military constitution? Then I put it straight to you. Do we need a new constitution in Nigeria?
Thank you, Maazi. I think before going to the why, I think I want it to be clear that when I'm talking about a new constitution, I am talking about a new constitution that from the word go will be seen as a new constitution for rapid and inclusive development of Nigeria, not just a constitution for a constitution. And I'm also trying to put it from my perspective that this particular constitution is something that we should try for 30 years. Then after that, we should have a comprehensive review and see how it works for us. So I want that to be out there, that when I'm discussing about a new constitution, it's a new constitution for inclusive and rapid development. And also we're looking at a time frame of about 30 years.
Okay.
Later on, you see the reason why I have that 30 years. So I can now
Okay.
go on the, okay. You wanted to say
Yeah.
something because you,
Yeah, I mean, it's to my question, if we need a new constitution, your answer is
yes,
very clear and direct. So we
that's what I
need
was
a
going
new.
to say. Yeah, definitely we need a new constitution. And I think I had said that before in my New Year message to Nigerians and also the last But I think what has made it clear to everybody, what I say is reinforcing what I said before, is the Patriots Colloquium that took place on March 18th, whereby there was a general consensus, what I say for the first time, for our elders who have been talking all this while about a new constitution, and then our current politicians that I could say represented by the governor of Lagos State, and then some politicians who have been there before but no longer in power, Reboshola, Demanco. So there was this consensus by all the people that we need a new constitution. So I will only reinforce that we need a new constitution.
Okay, thank you very much. So we need a new constitution. Now, let's, you've already mentioned the events that happened within the week where eminent Nigerians, spoke. There is this clamor across the nation for a new constitution. But Nigerians, if we recall, gathered in 2014 and produced a document called the 2014 Confab Report, which is almost like many would argue that it's like almost like a constitution. How does this current clamor help us in terms of the implementation of the 2014 report? Are you saying, or rather your argument, are you positing that, okay, let's ignore everything that happened, let's ignore the 2014 confab, and let's just produce a new constitution? Or are you saying that we should revisit the 2014 as a benchmark for any further conversation?
I think where we are now, I mean, the keynote speech there was delivered by the erudite High Chief Michael Zekome. And from his contribution, he made some suggestions which I share with. I think most people share that idea. Although there are some who are saying go ahead with the 2014 national conference. But from what Mike was saying, we will have to now put things together, starting with the 1963 Constitution, the 2014 National Conference, and also new things that could come up. Okay, and then get it all together. But you could say that the major provisions of the new constitution will come from the confab and the 1963 constitution. Then, of course, other things will be added onto it. That's why when I was talking about a new constitution and something that should be there, I mentioned what I could call 10 pillars, which maybe if one of those pillars is not in the National Confab report, then of course in a new constitution that we have, it is something that most Nigerians would want. Take, for instance, the issue of parliamentary system of government. I don't know whether it was mentioned in the 2014 confab, but I say that as of today, at least 90% of Nigerians would want a parliamentary system of government for the country.
90% of Nigeria. How did we come about that figure?
I say at least 90% will come out, will go for that.
Whoa, 90%. That's
Say at least.
okay.
You can do that yourself. Do a sample.
Okay, I think I would take that upon myself to. Yeah. Now, there is a key takeaway from the events that happened in Lagos, where, as you rightly noted, I believe you were in that meeting also virtually. If you look at that, there was a key takeaway from that event, and that key takeaway, or rather from that conversation, that key takeaway was the proposition for a referendum commission. Now, yes, these are, some would argue that these are buzzwords thrown here and there. As they say, the test of the pudding is in the eating. Now, when people talk about the referendum commission, that means we would have okay. Would you help us here to situate that how that is in this new constitution that is being pushed for? A referendum commission, is it going to come after the constitution, or is it something that will come before the constitution in order to help the people to actually agree on? In Mike Ezeoke's argument, he said that Nigeria needs a constitution that should be autochthonous. What's your take?
I think let me at least make it clear about this issue of constitution, and then the issue of referendum commission, and the current National Assembly, okay, vis-a-vis constitution making. I think basically the role that is being set out according to the Patriots Colloquium outcome for the National Assembly is for them to pass a law setting up this commission that will handle the issue of a referendum. But the content and so on and so forth is not for the National Assembly to think out with. Like right now, they're doing a review constitution. No, that's not what is going to be. I think part of what will come is also an issue that needs to be fine-tuned about which body or which group will be responsible for collating what should go to the referendum. Because the referendum is asking all Nigerians, do you want this or don't you want that? Okay? If they say we want this, then that becomes the constitution. But putting together what will be put across for referendum, that is an area that will be fine-tuned. Whether the law that will come from the National Assembly will set up, what I call it, constitution drafting, or whichever way comes out of it, which is separate from the commission that will handle the referendum. When Chief Michael Ezeoke was making his speech, he was sort of trying to put it across that the referendum commission would also handle the issue of collating what could be the constitution that Nigerians will go to the referendum for. But I think when the chairman of the colloquium, which is the revered Chief Emeka Ugwu-Oju, when he was summarizing what happened, he made it clear that the referendum commission will not be the body that will also be responsible for putting the constitution together. Their job would only be to set out the terms of reference, how the referendum will take place, and then have an oversight with regards to the referendum. They are not going to be involved with coming up with what could be the new constitution. And that, for me, is a better route to go.
So in other words, the referendum commission would have its job restricted and, to certain timeline. That means the moment they were able to get out this guideline, the referendum commission dies, because obviously whatever they now bring out will probably have to form part of the constitution that ought to run on its own. It's no longer needed for future references, or for, it's not something that will now keep existing.
The referendum commission is just only to conduct a referendum. That's their job. After the referendum and the result is there. Yes.
Okay. Now, in this case, it brings me to, Tony Nadi, who is also with you in Lagos there. Tony Nadi is the Secretary General of the Nigerian Indigenous Alliance. I believe that's the NINAS. Now, Tony Nadi has, in many occasions and in many forums, has argued that the Nigerian constitution should be repealed and that the people should, in his words, he refers it to as the indigenous people should be able to come up with a new constitution, or sometimes he refers it as the Constituent Assembly. Just opposing that to what the National Assembly is doing today, say they are trying to do a constitutional amendment. He does not agree that this National Assembly has anything to do with constitutional amendment, making new constitution. How do we then get off the point of saying here is the starting point? And that is bringing us to the topic, which is how. How are we going to do that? Are we going to, assemble people based on local government, or based on tribe, or based on region, or based on religion? How are you going to assemble individuals to begin to talk about this? And will the National Assembly, who today believe that they own the right to make and amend constitution, agree to that? How is that going to be done?
Yeah, I think Tony Nari has his views. My good friend and ally, although I haven't seen him for some time. And I think I might not share his view in its entirety, but I share his view that the constitutional amendment by the National Assembly definitely is not the way to go. And that also is something that all the stakeholders at the colloquium agreed upon. And if you remember when I was studying, I said the National Assembly, what is required of them now is not about making a constitution for Nigeria, but to create a commission that will handle the referendum. Because the point is that we are saying now that the entire country will now be responsible for producing of the constitution. That's what the referendum is all about. That's every Nigerian will say, yes, I want this, I don't want that. Then the details of what will come before them is now what could be worked on. But maybe if I could just put it, put something, it doesn't have to be that way, but that could provide some clarity from it. Let's say now you have the patriots and all those who support the patriots, one way or the other, come up with a document that will say this is what the new constitution of Nigeria will be. Okay. And then the current National Assembly do their own review, come up with what they think it should be. Okay. Of course, the work is cut out for referendum. It will be Nigerians, there are these two documents, this one from the Patriots, this one from the National Assembly. Which one do you want? All Nigerians will vote, and whatever they vote for, that will be the new constitution.
Can we, I'm laughing because
Just give you an example. So
I
if
know,
what the
but whenever we talk about referendum, one will reflect back on election, and my mind is playing karo with me. Would that not be rigged? Don't you think so?
Yeah, I think if I will comment here now, it is this referendum, okay, it will be difficult to rig in the sense that it is not partisan. it is Nigerians trying to agree on how they want to live. So who wants to rig, unless it's foreigners that are trying to, prevent Nigerians from agreeing on how to get themselves design something that they think will work for them. So, I mean, it will be madness to see somebody trying to rig the millions, and when it is not vote for P2B or vote for Tinubu or vote for, this is how we want to live as Nigerians. And this is the sort of document that could make us to be like China or Singapore or this in X number of years. Okay.
Let me
Well,
take us
yeah.
let me take us a little backwards here.
Yeah.
Many would argue that the Constitution is actually not our problem. Many have argued that the United Kingdom, for instance, does not have a written constitution, yet they function very well. Those in that line of thought will say that it doesn't necessarily matter the constitution with which we operate, that it is inherent in the people if they decide, be it parliamentary system, presidential system, monarchy, or whatever. And they have given so many examples. For instance, in this dispensation, where we run a presidential system, 36 governors plus FCD, we have about 2 to 5 states that are doing differently, operating the same constitution. So, would you then agree that it may not entirely be a question of a constitution, but a question of the people, the intent, and how they, probably how they've come about?
Yeah, I think I belong to the school of thought that the Constitution matters. It matters a whole lot. Of course, individuals also matter. So for somebody to say Constitution doesn't matter, it matters. That's why people produce Constitution. This idea of Britain not having, because Britain has a Constitution, but it's not that it's not written. If not, it will be a mad house. There's an understanding of how they need to live their lives, organize themselves in the United Kingdom, except that it is not written. Okay. So coming to the issue of that constitution doesn't matter, I would come to Nigeria specifically. And that's why when I said this particular constitution that we will have, we will try it for 30 years. Okay. The reality is that we have tried the parliamentary system for some years, and then we have tried the presidential system for some years. So we are in a position to look at both systems, even though we have tried the presidential for much longer than the parliamentary system. But one that strikes us immediately is the issue of corruption. Okay, we know that corruption is a killer, and we can see how corruption flourishes in the two systems. I can go into the details on why it is this or why it is that. But we could
Go
say
ahead.
that during the parliamentary system of government, if Nigeria had corruption at 10%, okay, we say kickback 10%. Now you have corruption at 1,000% at the presidential system. Of course, 10 and 1,000, you can see the difference. I will take 10% any day than 1,000% corruption. Okay. So in that instance, the system matters. And for Nigeria, we've seen the parliamentary, we've seen the presidential, and luckily, many of the people who who practiced or who were there during the parliamentary system. That's why we just need to get this thing done quickly before we lose the Aya Debanjos and co. Okay, because they've seen the two systems and they can say which one is better. So definitely, parliamentary for me is better than the presidential system of government for Nigeria. That's why sometimes, like when I was watching one this and I was listening to a senior senator, Senator Alain Dume, when he was talking about budget padding, and then he wanted to talk about Nigeria and the United States. And for me, it was for crying out loud. Pork barrel, Nigeria budget padding. It's like United States, they can afford that. Nigeria, we can't afford budget padding. We see an economy that one company produces 10 times what Nigeria, and then you want to practice the same thing as the United States. United States, at this point in time, have the luxury of the wealth and the capacity to practice a presidential system of government. Nigeria, nowhere. And that's why we're where we are now.
If you, I mean, if I engage you more on the comparative analysis between the two political systems, one striking observation would be, if the parliamentary system of government was that so fantastic, why was it that the military, even in that fantastic system, still struck because of corruption? Because if you go back and read Nzogo, on some of the, I think on the archive now, you can hear him on some of the videos and some of the written words. Part of the reason why they struck at that point, they talk about corruption. So I think it's not necessarily that the presidential system encouraged to balloon, but it is because the individuals, the practitioners of, irrespective of any system, didn't have the, didn't punish people enough, that corruption over the years grew. My question then will be, if parliamentary system was that fantastic, why did it fail in the First Republic?
Yeah, I think maybe you were not listening to me. Parliamentary system did not fail. Okay, I mean some young people.
Well, for the fact that the military took over,
you know what I'm
some
saying?
would look for that.
Military, just like you have bandits today. Okay, you had military who, based on their knowledge at that point in time, okay, some young men, exuberant, okay, had a coup. All right, and we saw it. And we saw what was happening then and what is happening now. Okay, it's like they owe an apology to Nigerians for that coup. I think I put it in physical terms. I said at that point in time they were talking about corruption was 10%, right? 10%ers. Today, Nigerians are crying, please, let's have people who will even take only 25%. That's where we are now in terms of corruption. So it's a no-brainer that between the parliamentary and presidential system. But let me also give you the reasons why one is less corrupt than the other. Okay? In a parliamentary system of government, any politician, the most he can vie for is a parliamentary seat. In a presidential system,
Just like a senator.
less than a senatorial zone, it is two local governments. Okay, in a presidential system, one person runs for governorship, another person runs for president. Have you tried to find out what the budget is now for running for governorship or for president?
Governorship might be
What do you
about
think will happen?
5 to 10 billion.
Uh-huh. So when that person spends 10 billion and then his salary is 10 million a year, what do you think will happen? It's a no-brainer that immediately you have a system that encourages corruption the degree. So I mean, if somebody spends more than 50 million to get his parliamentary seat, okay, yeah, the most you can look for is 50 million, okay, to cover his cost. I'm just using that. I mean, you don't have to, but then compare that with 10 billion, or if it is presidential, you know how much presidential is. But in a parliamentary system, for prime minister, it's only his parliamentary seat. It's just that the party has to make sure that the best person is the leader that can lead them to victory, or that can ensure that they get as many parliamentary system seats as possible.
Now, there are demerits. I mean, this is a conversation here, people. Those of you watching us, you can also bring in your own question to my guest here by typing it in the comment section. And I promise you, we got to be respectful. As long as you have a question that you want to ask, type it. I'm going to bring it on the screen, and my guest would try as much as possible to answer your question. Now, let me come back and let's stay, because it appears from what you're saying, what the patriots, the eminent elder statesmen, and many other groups, what Nigerians are saying appears to be that they prefer the parliamentary system of government. Now, I want to look at some of the merits of that system of government. One of the against the parliamentary system of government is the lack of separation of power. That in a parliamentary system, that executive branch, that is the prime minister, is drawn from the legislative branch into the, and this integration, integration of power can lead to lack of legislative function. If you look at it this way, Nigeria is a vast nation where if you do not go round the country to campaign and tell people your idea, but you only was elected based on 2 local government, as you alluded to, suddenly you come to Abuja and you become the president. Now, another weak point. If that happens, don't you think that will lead to parliamentary system of, that will lead to dominance of majority party, that the party or coalition with a majority parliament can wield significant power in this case, thereby, giving dissatisfaction to certain section of the country, saying, well, by the way, we did not vote for this person, but he's now lording it over us as the minister, so to say. In a complex and a multi-ethnic nation like Nigeria, do you think that will fly?
I think I hope you haven't mixed things up, in the sense that it is in a parliamentary system that you don't have an emperor, unlike in a presidential system whereby you have one person becoming the emperor, because it's like, I conquered this thing, where were you? A parliamentary system of government, the prime minister is the first among equals. Everybody in the parliament is equal because you secured your seat, I secured it. That's why I said people choose who they think will be the best among them. So he's not an emperor. And if
No, he's not an emperor, but he lacks direct accountability because he's not accountable to Nigerians. It's only that significant, wherever he got his votes from. that he can now.
That's not that. That's I don't know whether we're on the same page. With he's not the prime minister of his constituency. He's the prime minister of Nigeria.
Sure, but he derives his
Uh-huh.
power from his constituency.
He's prime minister of Nigeria because his party got the most seats.
Yes.
Okay, in Nigeria. In other words, you have people from all parts of Nigeria in that parliament. Okay, and that's why he's a leader. So he's representing the entire country because the team there is also from different parts of the country. And because it's a collegiate system, it is not what he says, it is what the group. And before then, you run based on a program that you have to, you campaign on a program. Okay, and this is an input from party people from every part of Nigeria. So the idea of that somebody did not campaign all over the country, that he doesn't know what happens in other part of the country, doesn't make much sense to me. That's
No,
right.
but
But before then, okay.
My argument is bringing Nigerian peculiarity into being, that Nigerians want to feel the presence of whoever is leading them. Not,
Yeah,
we understand that.
I'm coming to something too, because I will say that when we talked about why we need a new constitution, I proposed what I will call 10 pillars that must be in that constitution. And for one reason or the other, many of those pillars were also captured in the keynote address at the colloquium that was presented by Mike Ezeoke. And if you don't mind, I might go through that again. And some of those pillars, even the two major presidential candidates in the last election, which is Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi, have already canvassed for that. That would mean that if they are canvassing the opinion of the people who voted for them, that means that majority of Nigerians share that view. But let me quickly run through some of those items. We started with parliamentary system of government. Then the other one being that there should be 6 geopolitical zones in the constitution, okay, which is not the case now. Then there should be single term of 5 years for all executive positions that will be rotated amongst the geopolitical or senatorial zones within the local government. I think it's that single term that P2B 5 years, Article 6 years, but I think 5 years is what I subscribe to. Then I also said another pillar, there should be a development commission for each of the geopolitical zones. This time around, it is not going to be a political development commission. It is a commission that will see how in a particular state, in a particular zone, that will say in 20 years, this is where we want to be. And if it means that the chief executive that can do that job is from India, he'll be recruited to do the job. So it's not this one like you have NDDC, it's like a chairman from this state, MD from that, and then people are not looking at what development parameters are being expected from, because this is going to be a major engine of development when we have these 6 geopolitical zones in a new constitution, and you have commissions that are focused strictly on how they can take the zones to the next level, which is presently lacking. What we have now, forget about, we have a new one, Southeast Development Commission. They're all political commissions. But in this new constitution, it will be a development constitution. Then the other one being an electoral system that will eliminate physical collection of votes after votes are counted. In other words, making sure that we have the voting electoral system that can deliver the goods. So we won't suffer what we suffered in this last election. And of course, there's a consensus that the waste report should be implemented. So that's will be part of the electoral system. Then, of course, another pillar is freedom of religion. Nigerians practice whichever religion, and the government should not get involved in religious affairs. The other one being the security architecture for the country. In the new constitution, we have an architecture that the focus is on how best can Nigeria and Nigerians be secured. That brings me to another thing that Senator Ali Ndume was talking about, said he will never go for state police. Okay? I don't know what that means. If the security architecture that we need in Nigeria requires state police, of course we should have state police. It is different from somebody saying, they will misuse it. And state governors or this, that will misuse it. Let's worry about the issue of misusing. But the issue of, is that the best way to protect the lives and citizens of people in the state? If that's it, that's what it should be, not pandering to things that are not relevant with regards to security. I think you also mentioned, do you know, resident here and here. If we just focus on how do we secure the country, I will look at the architecture. If it turns out that we need federal police, zonal police, state police, local, then let's have it. Okay, that's what should be in the new constitution. Then, of course, citizens' rights should be there, and I also make a case that at least 30% of the seats in the parliament should be reserved for women. And last but not the least, the constitution should be subject to review after 30 years. So those are the 10 pillars I have in mind. Of course, you have issues like resource control and all those ones. That could also be discussed. But those are the
So
10 key pillars that should be in a new constitution. So it's not just
excellent.
parliament. The other things that will make sure that there's stability and development can take place even when you have a bad prime minister.
Mm. Now, that's, I mean, obviously the 10 pillars the 10 cardinal pillars you've just rolled out now. I, on a personal note, also agree with almost all of them. Now, but if we come to this before we round up here, if we come back to this topic in discussion, the question now, we have discussed, why a new constitution. You forcefully made the argument that it's going to help in accelerating development and also help in getting Nigeria where it ought to be. How, you've also alluded to that. The question now, before we call it today, is the question of timeline. When do you think that this constitution is needed? Many people would argue that, well, it should have been yesterday, but here we are. That's not the case. When do you think that this is needed? How urgent?
Yeah, I think I had addressed that before, but then with the stand of the colloquium that took place at the Patriots colloquium, I will now call the Patriots colloquium Plan A, and the one I had suggested before, Plan B. What do I mean by Plan A? Now, if we go according to how the Patriots colloquium, looking at a new constitution and what comes after that, then that means that within the next 1 year, we would have been in a position to start talking about having a new constitution and then going to have a new government in place. So in that instance, that means that we will have a constitution before 2027, and then the next election in 2027 will then kickstart that new constitution. And for me, I believe it will then be a parliamentary system of government. But then for Plan B, I was proposing that we should focus on having a new constitution a year or two after the 2027 election. Why is that the case? We did the analysis that we shouldn't be doing the same thing, same way when I expect a different result. We've had the parliament since 1999 not being able to give us a new constitution, and there's a reason for that, because the constitution that brought them into being, makes it difficult for them to attempt the sort of change that we want. So that means that expecting the present crop of parliamentarians to give us a new constitution would be almost impossible. But of course, with the smart idea of the patriots, and that is, they should just pass a law. They shouldn't bother about giving us a new constitution. They should pass a law for a referendum commission, and then Nigerians will give themselves a new constitution, which will be decided by referendum. Failing which, then we'll start the mobilization. I mean, we've already started discussing that, but then we'll kick on into top gear, because this is about Nigerians trying to figure out how they want to live. And we have told them that that could be done even through the current national and state assemblies. What you only need to do is in 2027, you now ensure that all the members that will be voted into the national and state parliament are those whose business is one. We are sending them to go and ensure that we have a new constitution. In other words, they should pass the referendum commission bill if these current ones don't do that. And, we'll take it from there. They knowing that the sort of people that we are sending are not people who will call politicians, but we're only sending them. I listed some people, which included bishops, people who just after the constitution they go back to their job, so that we avoid any partisanship with regards to that particular election. That's for Plan B. But Plan A is the Patriots way, which I believe that is very doable once Nigerians know that they have the power to give themselves a constitution. And as also pointed out in that colloquium, that somebody like the president, if he buys into it, would go a long way in bringing on board the members of the National Assembly and the governors to see that the way to go is to have this law that will create a referendum commission, because we are living in Nigeria now and we are in a deep hole. We should be looking at how to dig ourselves out of that hole, and then a new constitution will be a major plan for that, because it brings out all that is needed to stop or minimize the corruption, which is a major thing that is killing us, having a security architecture that works, having development commissions that can do redevelopment, having a structure that Nigerians feel that, yes, we can get things done in our geopolitical zones and in our states without the federal government being on our back, and also a system whereby we know that there will be less stealing, less corruption, people who want to get a second term, okay, when the constitution will be just a single term. And at least for the first 30 years, takes care of all the 6 geopolitical zones. Each zones will get their 5 years. And after 30 years, I think we can look at where we are by then. But definitely, if I could look at the crystal ball, I would say that we will be much better after 30 years if we adopt a new constitution with these pillars sooner than later.
You know, while I like the ideas posited here, let me quickly on the first plank, the first idea, which is to have this done within session, then have it kickstart in 2027. May I then
Yes.
ask, the current president, assuming that everything goes well, does it mean he's not going to be eligible by 2027? Or does it mean that he's going to be eligible and it will start with him in terms of re-election?
Okay. I think I'll look at addressing the issue of the current president. I'll look at things from 3 planks. But also, I am in a position, unlike maybe some other people, that at least I know the man, Bola Tinubu, before he became a politician. I mean, it's somebody that I've known since 1987, 88, okay, when he was treasurer at Mobile, Nigeria, and I was then a banker in IBW Afribank. So I've known him for that long, and we've interfaced. I was a key stakeholder in Nadeco. He was out there, we were here, and of course, we followed, we interacted when he was governor of Lagos. So I think I know him a bit, and he's somebody that I would say loves Nigeria and would want to do the right thing. Okay. And there are 3 things. One, none of us will know whether we'll be alive by 2027. That's one. 2, none of us know what our state of health will be in 2027. Right. Okay. So, Mr. President, we're looking at a situation whereby, by God's grace, he will be alive and he'll be healthy in 2027. So the issue becomes, what sort of country will we have in 2027? I guarantee you that if we continue the way we are now, I don't think he will want to be the president of what could be Nigeria in 2027 if the trajectory doesn't change. And that's what this new constitution is trying to change. So in that instance, if we have the new constitution, and as I say, most Nigerians want a parliamentary system of government, the details will be there. If he wants to run, he probably will run for his own parliamentary seat. And if his group thinks that he should be the prime minister, so be it. But that's when we get to the bridge, we'll cross it. But we are talking about how do we save Nigeria, and how do we make sure that Nigeria is a country that the rest of Africa will be proud of. That's the problem we're having. Some people look at it from their personal point of view, and you have a country where look at how is it UAE is treating Nigeria. It's and somebody will call himself, will be proud to be a governor or a member of this thing when we have been treated like, like rags. We can have a country that will be respected by the world if we get our constitution right. And that's what the patriots have seen. They've seen it all. And every Nigerian worth his salt should back the Patriots view. And I could say here that at least my immediate constituency, which is Southeast South professionals, okay, the president, Hannibal Owefo, says, let the whole world know that Southeast South professionals are backing the Patriots all the way. I will mobilize Southeast South to support that view. And also the Southern professionals, although we haven't been quite active or recent, I happen to be the coordinator and the current Minister of Finance and coordinator of the economy, Wale, happened to be my deputy when we started up. And we are quite active as Southern professionals to support the Southern delegation to the 2014 conference. I remember we even flew in a young lady from Rwanda who lost both her parents during the genocide to address our delegates on why we should get things right in Nigeria. So I'm sure the Southern professionals, if we have a meeting again, will support what the Patriots are doing. But every Nigerian should rally around the Patriots and let's have a new constitution.
Thank you very much. Now, in rounding up here, would you then agree with me that the success of the intended constitution is solely dependent on the feeling and the support of whoever is the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria?
I don't share that view. Some people share that view. I said Nigerians are the people that will give themselves the constitution. No individual can give Nigeria a constitution. If not, it's not a people's constitution. But based on the present system of government, the presidential system, any person who is a president has a very important role to play in ensuring that the things that needs to be done, which in this instance, trying to get the National Assembly to pass the law for a referendum commission. So, Mr. President, the ball is in his court. We know the powers that the presidential assembly has. He can go a long way in making it happen. But at the end of the day, the constitution has to be made by Nigerians.
Thank you very much. So in 1 minute, if you can summarize, and again, I know you've just appealed to the president right away, but in 1 minute, if you can summarize, then before we'll call it a day.
Yeah, I think I will summarize that it's fantastic that the colloquium took place. We gave Nigerians the opportunity to now know that all of us are on the same page with regards to having a new constitution. And I will also use this opportunity to plead to Nigerians, you can do it. I mean, you saw what the obedience did within this short period of time. All Nigerians could become obedient on steroids so that we can get this constitution. For me as a person, I'm trying to spread the message, but the truth is that I just have maybe between now and July to do what I can do with regards to getting us to know that we do the right thing. From July, I'll be focusing on something that will be taking my attention to the rest of Africa and the Caribbean. There's this network that we're working on with African Continental Free Trade Area, African Development Bank, and Africa Export Import Bank, on how we can make sure that the African Continental Free Trade Area becomes what it should be. So that's the thing I'll be focusing on. And I will want to, when I'm going to other countries, to be proud to say, yes, Nigerians, we are now on the right track by making sure that we'll have a new constitution before 2027. On that
Thank
note,
you very
much. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That is a very fine place to anchor it. It has been a one-on-one conversation with my guest here, Mr. Emeka Ugwu-Oju, on a new Nigerian constitution. Why, how, when? Emeka, as I said at the beginning, is the chairman board of trustees, Southeast, South professionals of Nigeria. Thank you once more. And to our viewers, thank you for all of you who stayed till this end. And if you haven't subscribed to this platform, I say use the opportunity to click the like button and share this video impactful conversation with my guest here tonight. I say to every one of us, good night. Thank you for joining.
Maazi, and I wish
Bye
all
for now.
of us a happy Easter in advance.